Welcome to our world. Right now, forums and sessions are taking place across various platforms addressing all the key issues related to the development of the Far East. We've invited, in our view, the most important moderators to lead discussions on increasing investment, finance, tourism development, and the implementation of master plans. If I may, I'll give the floor now. Thank you very much. Colleagues, please proceed. First, I'd like to thank you for your active participation in the forum. We meet with moderators regularly throughout the event. Your work is extremely important because you're not just moderators, you consolidate the suggestions from business colleagues on improving operations in the Far East, which is crucial. You also help guide government bodies, from municipal to federal levels, in developing support measures for the Far East's economic growth. I understand that during this work, you come up with specific issues that can be formulated, summarized, and proposed for solutions at various decision-making levels. Please, what ideas and proposals do you have? Vladimir Solodov, Governor of the Kamchatka Territory. I moderated the session Living Well Where We Are, where we discussed the implementation of the master plan. If I may, I'd like to start by highlighting a significant event we are commemorating today for the entire Far East. Exactly 170 years ago, in 1854, an Anglo-French squadron was defeated near a remote, then unknown port called Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky. This is symbolic for us because, when discussing the future of cities, it was thanks to the heroism of a relatively small detachment of our military, volunteers, and local residents who gave an unprecedentedly heroic and highly effective military response to the enemy. Why is this important for the development of cities? In the Far East, cities were founded with the purpose of repelling invaders, ensuring the safety of the population in extreme conditions, and supporting industry with naval squadrons. But today, we understand that this alone is not enough. Our task is to ensure the accelerated development of the Far East, and the government, together with the regions, works on this daily. Effective mechanisms have been established, such as rental housing, the Far Eastern mortgage, and Far Eastern concessions. The presidential subsidy plays a very important role, allowing us to develop infrastructure. It is crucial that cities do not fall behind this momentum, that they become true magnets for attracting people and improving quality of life. This historic opportunity gives us the chance to realize the implementation of the master plans, which were initiated by you, in 2020. Yes. But then we plan to implement this in 200 more cities. Exactly. And we are the pioneers here. Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky was the first to start in 2022. What I'd like to point out is that all the master plans were developed based on the wishes of our residents. We must not let their expectations down. We need to create a truly attractive living environment. The master plans are a practical step toward that goal. More than 70 projects will be completed this year. I want to emphasize that the first stage of implementation has been fully funded. I'd like to thank the government of the Russian Federation for that. However, moving forward, we will certainly need continued support and attention. In this regard, Vladimir Vladimirovich, we have a few proposals that the session participants have formulated. First, the national projects, which are now being finalized and will be approved by the end of the year, must prioritize the development and implementation of master plans. In the previous phase of development, Vladimir Vladimirovich, you stressed the necessity of ensuring that all state programs allocate a certain quota for the Far Eastern region. We would request that this principle be extended to national projects, based on the proportion of the population living in the Far East. Second, a highly effective mechanism that is already in place is the so-called infrastructure menu. These are the budgets we allocate to implement infrastructure projects. In December 2022, you issued a directive to allocate 100 billion rubles toward the realization of master plan projects. Unfortunately, this directive has not been fully carried out. We would ask that a specific target be set in the new round of infrastructure budget loans, which are currently being determined, to ensure that master plan projects in the Far East are realized, and that your directive is fully implemented. Third, I would like to request your support in accelerating and simplifying the process of transferring federal assets, when they are unused, for the implementation of master plan projects. This could apply to land plots or, as in Petropavlovsk, port facilities that are now abandoned and belong to various federal agencies, such as the National Fishery Resource and the Ministry of Defense. In cases where there are no objections regarding national defense, we understand the importance of expediting this process. Lastly, Vladimir Vladimirovich, even within the Far East, the regions face different conditions, and construction is particularly challenging in areas where everything must be imported. For example, on Kamchatka. We would ask that this northern supply factor be taken into account when determining subsidy coefficients. Overall, Vladimir Vladimirovich, on behalf of the residents of our regions, I would like to thank you for your constant attention to urban development. All your directives will undoubtedly be carried out. We need to review this as the final budget is being formed, essentially at the stage of working on it. We need to discuss the infrastructure menu and subsidies as well. We'll definitely return to this in Moscow. Thank you very much. Vladimir Vladimirovich, good afternoon. My name is Vadim Amontov. I run the tour operator Russia Discovery, which for over 20 years has been helping our fellow citizens, and others as well, discover our country. The Far East is rapidly developing today, and with it, tourism is also growing. This is evident from the sessions currently taking place at the Eastern Economic Forum. Today, there were discussions on 4 platforms. With your support, projects like 5 Seas and Lake Baikal and the Far Eastern Trails are being implemented. These projects will also be a significant driver of future development. Today, together with colleagues at the Far East, Land of Adventure session, we discussed in detail what additional measures could help and support the development of tourism in the Far East, which makes up 40% of our country, but unfortunately remains largely unknown to most residents. The first issue, of course, is tourism, especially in such challenging regions as the Far East and the Arctic. This is primarily about transportation logistics. We are eagerly waiting for, and kindly request, more attention to small aviation. We urgently need planes and helicopters that could help unlock the potential of these tourism routes in these regions. The second issue concerns accommodation. The government's efforts to implement programs for building small hotels with around 120 rooms have been very effective. However, in the Far East and Arctic, this number of rooms in one location can sometimes be excessive. We would like to request the possibility for a single developer to build hotels across several regions or locations while keeping the overall room count. The criterion of 120 rooms could still apply, but spread across multiple hotels, to qualify for subsidies. Exactly right. Finally, the Far East and Arctic are home to stunningly beautiful coastal areas, which are part of Russia's borders. These include places like Wrangel Island, Franz Josef Land, the Kuril Islands, and the Commander Islands. And now, we are seeing rapid growth worldwide. You mean oceanic cruises? Exactly, yes. Expedition cruises, which not only dock at ports but also stop at various locations, allowing passengers to disembark using special boats. The growth in these types of cruises is enormous and rapidly accelerating worldwide. Our country is an extremely attractive region in this regard, where many people are eager to visit. Unfortunately, very few ships are currently available to operate such cruises. There are only a handful, and even that might be an overstatement. There are, however, investors who are ready to step in and purchase such vessels. But in order for this program to be fully realized and to become an excellent example of tourism diplomacy where we open our country to foreign visitors and showcase its beauty, certain measures would help. Specifically, we should expand the number of ports where these vessels can dock, perhaps even allowing ships under foreign flags, which would be purchased by investors. Additionally, we should increase the number of locations where tourists can disembark and re-embark as part of these cruises. Is this currently restricted by the Ministry of Defense? Yes, the list of ports is very small and highly limited. It would be great to expand it, adding more points for disembarkation and more ports where this could take place. This is a very important measure. There are indeed investors, but the current restrictions somewhat hold them back, making these cruises less attractive. We would be very grateful if it could be expanded. Regarding the number of hotel rooms, there's another important issue: constructing non-capital structures. This is also crucial. The Ministry of Economic Development has been very supportive in this area, and there's a major support program in place. It needs to continue. And what you mentioned about opening the region to more visitors is extremely important. Many restrictions were put in place long ago, and today they are no longer relevant. At one time, even Vladivostok was a closed city, essentially just a naval base and nothing more. But now it's flourishing, you could say. It's become a strong point of attraction. Yes, I completely agree with you. Please formalize all this. I would be happy to support you. Developing tourism in the Far East is one of the key lines of development for the region as a whole. Thank you very much. If I may, I'll continue just a bit. Today we discussed this at the session titled The Far East Land of Adventure, which shares the same name as the contest proposed by Yuri Petrovich. I'm confident that the success of the contest, as we've seen today, will soon lead to its expansion into an Arctic competition, combining it with the Far East. This is, of course, a powerful tool for promotion. We're looking forward to seeing these promotional videos on federal channels, making travel to these regions more attractive. Additionally, we'd like to further promote Russia beyond its borders. First and foremost, this involves creating a Russian tourism brand and launching a comprehensive promotion program that would showcase what truly lies behind the brand, what the word Russia represents, with all its stunning natural beauty. In this context, it would be very helpful to reduce the obstacles currently faced by foreign citizens wanting to visit our country. The electronic visa form currently consists of over 50 questions. I think, following the example of the fan ID used for the European Football Championship, we could simplify it somewhat. Not too drastically, though. Let's work on that. Yes, absolutely. It can certainly be done. Excellent. I would be extremely grateful. I assure you, it's possible. And in fact, for Southeast Asia, which is a major neighboring region with a huge market, we might even consider eliminating the visa requirement over time. Or at least, for now, making the visa multiple entry and free to encourage more visits here. Please submit the proposal. I'm confident many steps will be taken in that direction. One last thing, Vladimir Vladimirovich. We should organize an adventure tourism forum because I believe adventure tourism is a unique and growing field. It's a way to showcase our incredible nature and the wonders of our country. We often joke about how to identify an adventure tourist. When asked if they prefer red or white, they say, "I prefer the Barents Sea." That perfectly describes our type of tourists, those who come to explore the wilderness rather than stay in cities. I believe this is a strong magnet for others. In the past, we held such a forum within our company, and it greatly contributed to improving the level of service in the region that hosted other partners. They saw firsthand how things could be done differently, how they could be done better, and received feedback from colleagues. So, I'm really hoping you will support this idea. I envision this forum becoming a regular event that attracts many operators from other regions. Do you mean within the framework of the Eastern Economic Forum or as a separate event? I would eventually expand it to the entire country, but I think it would make sense to start with the Far Eastern Federal District. It has some of the most fascinating places, and many strong operators already providing high levels of service. Yes, in Primorsky Krai, on Kamchatka, there are definitely many unique spots, especially on the islands. Do you think there will be similar interest in the Arctic? I have no doubt. I've been in love with the Arctic for over 20 years, being from Arkhangelsk myself, and I'm certain the Arctic has immense growth potential. Many operators will definitely be eager to host such forums there. Take Murmansk, for example, which you've likely heard about. It's growing rapidly in terms of tourism. Thank you. Zana Vladimirovich, about the control systems of regulatory and oversight bodies. I've moved into the development system, now working in the prosecutor's office, and my session is titled "How much does control cost?" What do you mean by control? We're evaluating what is more important for the state control or the function of fostering business and entrepreneurship. Per your directive, administrative reforms are being implemented across the country, and in 5 years, the number of inspections has dropped from 1.5 million to 350,000 annually. Around 140,000 various permitting and regulatory procedures have been eliminated, which allows businesses to earn more than 200 billion rubles annually. This is a tangible impact we are already witnessing. The risk-based approach is incredibly helpful. 9 out of 10 preventive visits or remote inspections yield results, prompting businesses to change their practices and stop violating regulations, without intimidating them. However, we still see numerous investment projects where the groundwork hasn't even started, yet oversight bodies are already conducting inspections. Unfortunately, here in the Far East, out of 3,000 residents, 1,033 were inspected last year. That's a high number, and it includes residents with foreign participation, which can be intimidating. Participants in the session also cited examples from tax control, where businesses receive up to 10 requests in a single month. Even my own prosecutor's office isn't lagging in this respect, and sometimes the requests are substantial, with a compliance window of up to 3 days. There are also regulatory bodies like Fire Safety Oversight, which accounts for over a quarter of all inspections nationwide. The most unfortunate part is that more than 55% of these inspections yield no results. I want to share some tragic examples: the Lame Horse nightclub in Perm, the Winter Cherry shopping center in Kemerovo, and the Kuban elderly care home where lives were lost. All of these organizations were inspected by Fire Safety Oversight for up to 6 months, yet it had no meaningful impact. And of course, this leads us to the conclusion: is such oversight really necessary if it doesn't produce results and often seriously hinders business development? Wouldn't it be better to shift towards mandatory insurance with various risk indices? Naturally, we're not talking about enterprises that pose risks to life and health, but in cases where safety isn't a concern, the number of inspections, something noted by all participants, including government officials, needs to be significantly reduced. Specifically, this applies to customs inspections and limited regulatory oversight. For example, here in the ports of Primorsky Krai, there is a successful pilot project allowing customs authorities to consolidate the functions of 4 regulatory bodies. They board the ship, conduct their inspection, and provide a conclusion within 4 hours. This single-step process has reduced inspection time from 72 hours to 24 and doubled transshipment capacity from 7 to 12 million tons. Similarly, In Khabarovsk Krai, we implemented a pilot project that reduced the number of times a vessel is boarded for inspection from 2, once upon entering the port and once before departure, to just 1. This has cut the time spent on inspections by a third, allowing businesses to earn 3 times as much. Naturally, this raises the legitimate question of how much oversight should cost and whether it is necessary when it causes delays, such as with railway wagons transporting coal. Losses to businesses amount to hundreds of millions, while any violations found typically result in penalties of only $1 million or $2 million. There's also a significant issue with land crossings, specifically customs and regulatory delays. In February, you instructed the Federal Assembly to reduce these delays to 10 minutes. However, in the Far East, the average customs clearance time is 64 minutes, and for import shipments, it's 26 minutes. This greatly limits the efficiency of both rail and road transport and leads to a large number of complaints, all while we fail to uncover a significant number of violations. As someone who comes from a regulatory oversight background, it's clear to me that the number of blanket inspections needs to be reduced. Most importantly, the indicators of regulatory activity must reflect their effectiveness in fostering the state's development. We need to consider how much revenue the state earns from these activities versus the losses incurred by the regulatory bodies conducting the inspections. Furthermore, certain types of oversight might make more sense if replaced by mandatory insurance. This would generate additional investment, and businesses themselves would take on the responsibility of insuring their risks. You can see the issue from both perspectives. So please, formulate your proposals. We will definitely discuss this with the Prosecutor General's office and the government. Oversight should never be an end in itself. The primary goal is development, above all. And nothing should hinder that development. The only question is that oversight is undeniably necessary to ensure the safety of citizens. But we need to improve the mechanism. That's for certain, so please work on outlining the effect. Esteemed Vladimir Vladimirovich, I am Alexander Konstantinovich Kakij, General Director of Fininvest. For over 10 years, we have been investing in railway and transport logistics centers across the country. Today, I moderated a logistics session on the Far East. As you know, the entire pivot of logistics to the Far East has become the foundation for everything we now see happening in the region. I would like to mention that today, freight transportation from the west to the east is being conducted in cooperation with Russian railways. We are looking at ways to increase the length of container trains, allowing a single locomotive to haul more containers. This positive trend was highlighted by the delegates and participants of today's session, aiming to maximize the efficiency of these operations. Secondly, we discussed the growing volume of freight at the seaports in the Far East. Currently, about 90% of the capacity in the region is utilized, and it's approaching 95%. The average loading time for containers is 25 days. 25 days? Yes, 25 days. You may recall, back in 2022, there was a directive issued, which successfully resulted in an experiment to transport containers in open gondola cars. Our company was one of the first to receive a container train in these gondola cars in the Urals at our new, modern terminal. This practice proved effective and significant for the country, especially with the logistics shift toward the east. Our transport and logistics centers, TLCs, which are being built along the Trans-Siberian Railway, have become highly sought after under these conditions. Currently, not all operators of gondola cars view this initiative as a matter of national importance. One of the suggestions from today's session was to consider a government directive, perhaps from the Ministry of Transport, to explore the possibility of sending gondola cars in container trains on return trips. At present, 3 out of 4 gondola cars returning for coal loading travel empty. We propose that, through regulation or other measures, we encourage operators to adopt a more national-minded approach, allowing us to ship significantly more containers in gondola cars. For our part, in cooperation with Russian Railways, we have already constructed the Siberian TLC, which today we have established a hub for transshipping container data from gondola cars, subsequently placing them onto fitting platforms and sending them to the European part of Russia. Essentially, we have created circular routes. Coal is transported one way, and containers return in the opposite direction. From there, the containers are distributed across the European region. One of the proposals we would like to present is the regulation of gondola car operators to ensure they are made available for container loading on the return trip. You are likely aware of this issue. The leadership of Russian Railways, including Oleg Valentinovich, has already reported that they are doing their best to avoid sending empty gondola cars in either direction. Nevertheless, you have specific proposals on how to organize this more effectively. Please submit them formally. As I mentioned, the Far Eastern infrastructure is overloaded. One of the suggestions raised during today's session is the creation of dry ports in Vladivostok, following international examples. This would shift non-transshipment related operations, such as storage, to inland terminals, effectively increasing cargo handling capacity by 1.5 times without the need for significant financial investment. Even so, investments will still be required, as it is necessary to maintain operational speed. In accordance with your directive, I am very grateful that you supported our idea to create the largest dry port in the Russian Federation in the city of Artyom. With your assistance, a plot of land was allocated. Together with the leadership of the Primorsky territory, and thanks to Yuri Petrovich and the entire team at the Ministry for the Development of the Russian Far East, we have started the project, and the design phase is already complete. Currently, construction is underway. Understanding the importance of this issue, we ask you to consider it further. Taking this opportunity, I would also like to invite you to the grand opening of the largest dry port in Russia in Vladivostok at next year's Eastern Economic Forum. We expect to complete the project by then. We still have time, there's a full year ahead, and this forum is not over yet, but the proposal is solid. I wish you a successful conclusion to this important work. Esteemed Vladimir Vladimirovich, I am Nikolai Sapieagay. We were just discussing the development potential of the Far East and the Arctic. Specifically, we reviewed the reserves for attracting investments to the Far East, as Yuri Petrovich mentioned, and we believe that the investment targets for 2030 can be raised. The discussion involved federal agencies as well as key representatives from various industries, entrepreneurs who have either completed or are currently constructing enterprises and have practical experience in these areas. Thanks to the decisions that have been made, significant results have been achieved, and an effective system for attracting and supporting investors in the Far East has been established. It is truly a unique system that is in high demand among investors and allows them to meet their goals. As of now, as Yuri Petrovich mentioned, more than 2,800 investment projects worth 9 trillion rubles have been attracted, with half of that amount already invested in the economy of the Far East and Russia. Are we talking about the year 2030? Yes, by 2030. It's possible to increase these rates by 1.5 trillion rubles. While the opening of new reserves takes time, as we structure the projects, we expect to see even more substantial results by 2040, when these projects are fully realized. The growth rates we have achieved are raising the foundation, and to sustain this growth annually, we need new, relevant solutions. These solutions aren't only about infrastructure or finance, but also administrative measures, specifically tailored to certain sectors and the unique characteristics of the Far East, including its vast territory, logistics, and climatic conditions. For example, 65% of the region is a seismically active zone, and 45% is permafrost. Yet, Roads are being built everywhere. We propose creating a list of priority sectors that make the greatest contribution to economic development, analyzing their investment potential, and making decisions that will open new opportunities for investors. I thought this was already in progress. It is indeed underway. We aren't asking for specific directives, we are doing this work ourselves. We propose developing a productive plan for the development of the Far East, aligned with both infrastructure support and the creation of new enterprises. This type of work was once done by the USSR State Planning Committee, and we have the expertise for this as well. The Eastern Center for State Planning and the relevant ministries are also involved. We will take care of this, but we need the support of the relevant ministries involved in energy, trade, and other industries. Everything must be coordinated. You're saying directives are necessary to ensure all of this is synchronized. Vladimir Vladimirovich, let me provide 2 examples related to resource development. 1/3 of the Far Eastern economy comes from this sector, 32% of the gross regional product and 23% of capital investment. For some reserves and production, such as tin, uranium, tungsten, zinc, and gold, the Far East accounts for 60 to 80% of the national total. Despite this, the level of biological study in the region is only 35%, meaning that we have achieved these results with relatively limited research. Therefore, state involvement, as this is basic infrastructure, will significantly contribute to new biological exploration and yield substantial results. We've spoken with investors, including those in resource extraction, and they are ready not only to produce concentrate but also to create higher value-added products, effectively developing metallurgy. We do have some metallurgy in the Far East, but not much. To expand it, they need guarantees regarding electricity supply. By 2030, just for confirmed projects, an additional 3 gigawatts of generation capacity will be required. If we consider reserves, we can realistically double this figure because metallurgy demands even greater energy capacity. The second example is shipbuilding. The demand for fishing and cargo vessels in the Far East by 2037 exceeds 330 ships. This includes vessels for logistics, the fishing industry, and various cargo operators, ranging from icebreakers to dry cargo ships, tankers, and support vessels, with a total cost exceeding 2.5 trillion rubles. These are investments in themselves, but shipyards are also necessary. The creation of shipyards is critically important and cannot be overstated, so we will identify where and what kind of shipyards need to be built. Shipyards are integral to the development of the Northern Sea route, which in turn stimulates the creation of new enterprises along its path. We also discussed real estate development, agriculture, gas chemistry, and logistics, many sectors. In these sectors alone, we can attract, and our estimates match, more than 10 trillion rubles of investment. But only in specific areas. We must do more thorough work. That's why, Vladimir Vladimirovich, we will carry out this work and present a plan for creating new enterprises. Do you see this as being combined with logistics and energy supply challenges? Yes. Separately, it's impossible. Please go ahead. Good evening, Vladimir Vladimirovich. My name is Alexander Rudyev, and I am the first deputy chairman of SBER Bank. We've been discussing where to find financing for the projects my colleagues have mentioned, especially in the current environment of high interest rates. Our session focused on finances, but we approached these tasks from the perspective of master plans, as discussed earlier, and identified 5 pathways worth pursuing. The first is the maximum use by regions of the support mechanisms you, Vladimir Vladimirovich, mentioned in your address to the Federal Assembly. Particularly interesting to everyone was the use of investment budgetary loans. The panelists also highlighted how important it is that the existing mechanisms continue to function. These include preferential loans from EEF and the joint program with the Ministry for the Development of the Russian Far East, among others. However, it's crucial to complement and expand these mechanisms to attract more funds so they can serve as financial leverage, turning every unit of investment into a multiplier. The goal is to maximize the use of budget funds to attract as much market financing as possible, ensuring large-scale funding for projects while simultaneously reducing interest rates. This is the first approach discussed. The second point is prioritization. How do we lower interest rates? Since government funds are subsidized in one way or another, subsidies will help reduce the average interest rate for investment projects. This is the simplest solution SBE or bank can offer. It's the first, Vladimir Vladimirovich. But there are 4 more points ahead. The second is prioritization. Projects already underway need to be fully completed. As for upcoming projects, they should be evaluated and prioritized, choosing the most profitable and impactful ones. This would, in a positive sense, create an investment spiral. That is, we select a project with high profitability and strong effects. These effects then generate additional infrastructure, which Nikolai also mentioned, and so on. It's the simplest and most effective logic. Thank you, Vladimir Vladimirovich. The third approach is supportive banking regulation. If the central bank reduces the so-called risk weight for loans aimed at developing infrastructure projects, it will reduce the capital burden on banks and, most importantly, allow banks to lower interest rates. The impact may not be dramatic, but it is nonetheless significant. German Oskarovich discussed this matter with Irina during the business dialogue. I'm ready to mediate if needed. Thank you very much, Vladimir Vladimirovich. They've known each other for many years, and they speak their own language quite confidently. But in reality, I support this. Of course, there are boundaries that the regulator won't cross, but this is certainly a topic worth discussing. Thank you very much, Vladimir Vladimirovich. The fourth direction is attracting market debt by the regions. We all understand that debt must be handled very cautiously. At the same time, if a region is strong, if the project is solid and federally approved, and the debt burden on the regions is not too high currently, the average debt load for the Far East and Arctic regions is 44%, then there is room to increase debt, with federal approval. This would allow projects to be implemented much faster because inflation within these projects is growing rapidly. We both understand what we're talking about here, and we want to avoid repeating the same mistakes that have repeatedly hit the Ministry of Finance and the federal budget. However, there is logic in what you're saying. There is common sense in it. It's just that the easiest path for financial institutions is to secure, in essence, government guarantees. After all, it ultimately comes down to state guarantees, meaning that the state will end up paying in one way or another. But it's hard to argue with what you said about the quality of the projects being proposed and those that could be financed on market-based principles. In this case, we need collaboration among the Ministry of Industry, the government as a whole, and financial institutions to ensure we're talking about projects that will definitely, 100%, deliver the necessary returns on a market basis. We also thought about the possibility of special financial instruments, which we might call Arctic bonds or Far Eastern bonds, that would be available to all entities, including individuals in the Russian Federation. This way, every citizen of the country could participate in the profits generated by a project in the Far East. We're already using similar instruments. Logistics in Russian railways, RZHD, were mentioned earlier. RZHD issues such instruments, and they are quite effective. But we also need to approach this carefully. All participants in this process must be absolutely certain that this is a reliable, secured instrument. As a financial organization, we're ready to take on the responsibility of vetting these projects, and, together with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry for the Development of the Russian Far East, we can conduct this due diligence. Yes, that's crucial. And Sberbank's involvement, in this case, will be highly valuable. We can issue these in the form of digital financial assets to ensure maximum circulation, liquidity, and accessibility. Let's do it. That's a good proposal. Thank you very much. The fifth direction we considered during our session involves working with international contractors. For the Far East, this primarily means Chinese partners, large Chinese construction corporations that can bring in modern technology, along with their own financing. That's a significant advantage. Their financing is relatively cheap and could help solve several issues. These are the 5 directions we discussed, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Absolutely. Tomorrow's plenary session would be a good opportunity to bring this up in the presence of the Chinese delegation. Colleagues support such a project. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, esteemed Vladimir Vladimirovich. Vyaladov Alexander Evgenivich, Vice President of the Kurchatov Institute. Kurchatov Institute. Today, we held a session dedicated to the scientific and technological development of the Far East and Russia as a whole. What I'd like to highlight is that, here on Russky Island, unique conditions have been created and are developing for the growth of the Far East and the entire region. Thanks to your decisions, a key university has been established here, the largest in this area, the Far Eastern Federal University, FEFU. A unique infrastructure has been built, including a new world-class campus. When you visited the Kurchatov Institute in 2019, you supported Mikhail Valentinovich Kovalchuk's proposal to create a synchrotron radiation source here on Russky Island, a unique facility that we named the Russian Photon Source. I'd like to express my special gratitude for that. The presence of such a facility at the university fundamentally changes its status, elevating it to a new level, a systemic hub, not just for the Far East but for Russia as a whole. It places Russia among the key players in the scientific and technological agenda of the Asia-Pacific region. These types of facilities are vital for concentrating new technologies, knowledge, and competencies, serving as essential factories for the training of interdisciplinary specialists for cross-sectoral research. The facility currently being developed has the potential to unite over 20 Far Eastern universities around shared scientific goals. It can also integrate the remaining and preserved competencies of academic institutes. The third component, which Alexey Oligovich mentioned in his report, is the Innovation and Technology Center, ITC. The ITC is essentially a tool for developing and transferring technologies into the real economy of the region. We are forming a unique environment here, one that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. On one hand, we have the synchrotron, a unique center, and the university. This potential must be properly harnessed to accelerate the overall development of the region. Currently, Vladimir Vladimirovich, regional programs for scientific and technological development are being created. The government is developing such programs, and 20 pilot regions have been selected. However, the regions of the Far Eastern Federal District have not yet been included. It seems crucial to launch such a comprehensive program for the entire Far Eastern Federal District, focusing on the key priorities that are vital for the region. The first of these priorities is robotics, particularly marine robotics, underwater vehicles, robotic systems for ships and fleets. The second area is materials science and chemistry, with a focus on developing corrosion-resistant materials. There is a climate center here in Vladivostok dedicated to studying such properties. We have an entire network of such centers, and this can also be further developed. Another very important area is chemistry, specifically enhancing the efficiency of mineral extraction and processing. The final direction is biology, biotechnology, and bioengineering. Bioengineering involves nature-inspired technologies, which is a closely related concept. Bioengineering essentially refers to a set of technologies where we study biological mechanisms, replicate them, and combine them to create man-made objects of biological origin. Let me give you an example. This region has an incredibly rich bioresource base, probably unmatched anywhere else in the world in terms of concentration. We must harness this wealth for the development of pharmacology, medicine, and biotechnologies, such as bioenergy. One particular example is biomineralization. This is a natural process akin to 3D printing, where, for instance, the hard shell of a sea urchin or a mollusk's shell, which is inorganic, is created through natural biochemical processes over a series of stages. Studying these mechanisms opens the door to developing and advancing artificial, nature-inspired technologies and systems. And of course, workforce development should be a key cross-cutting focus. Every speaker today has emphasized the critical role that skilled personnel play in driving progress. With such clear mechanisms, we can create targeted, well-defined pathways for workforce training and development within these fields. The speakers also formulated requests and suggestions for government agencies at various levels. What is your proposal? We should create a separate scientific and technological development program for the entire Far Eastern region, modeled after the regional state programs for scientific and technological development that are currently being prepared and implemented. These programs already have a clear framework. Lastly, to ensure everything runs efficiently, it's crucial to engage the leading scientific organizations responsible for coordinating and overseeing the work. In fact, this can be divided by sectors, and other key optimizations can be introduced. Good. And what is the current status of the priorities you mentioned in 2019, such as the synchrotron project? This year, we've completed the design phase and carried out all the necessary geological surveys. We even had to change the original site due to unforeseen issues. There's a fault line? Yes, there's a geological fault, so we'll need to carry out some controlled blasting. It's not the most convenient situation, but the new site is fully suitable for the foundation. So, the work is underway? Yes, the work is progressing. We expect to receive positive approval from the main State Expert Review Board this year. Funding for the project is scheduled to begin in 2026. However, we are already working on the program. In collaboration with the Far Eastern University, we have developed a program to train the necessary personnel. I see. It's essential to ensure that this is accounted for in the budgeting process, both in the 3-year plan and for 2025 and 2026, so that it doesn't get cut or overlooked. Otherwise, they will complete the preliminary work, and then everything will stall due to a lack of funding. This must be considered through to the end. I agree with that. And regarding the program, it's absolutely right. It provides a strong foundation for the development of the regions as a whole. Good. First, I want to thank you. That's the first point. And second, even though someone from California once said that no additional orders are necessary, it's critical to consolidate these proposals because they are specific and actionable. We must ensure that nothing is forgotten, so that it's not just a case of meeting, discussing interesting ideas, and then having some of them slip away and be forgotten. Nothing should be overlooked. All of these proposals are very concrete and focused on regional development. In fact, some of them could be scaled up across the country later on. So, thank you very much for the meeting at tomorrow's regional session. Thank you. I'm not sure about the timing right now, but I believe it will be essential to visit these key locations and see firsthand how the work is progressing on the ground. Thank you all. Thank you for joining us on Our World. If you found this content valuable, Please like, comment, and subscribe.